Waycross presents an election forum. Issue 30, a proposed resolution number 4614. When voters go to the polls on November 4th, they will be asked to approve the following issue, which reads as follows. Issue 30. Shall the resolution of the Board of Township Trustees of the Township of Colerain approving the contract with the City of Harrison, Ohio for the designation of the Colerain Corridor Joint Economic Development Zone be approved?
And good evening. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Waycross Election Forum, this for Issue 30. I'm Jason Gregor, joined very faithfully with Jenny Key from the Community Press, bringing you the issues that affect your area. I'm very fortunate to have tonight with us for the actual levy, or not levy, but the issue. I am already going off on the wrong day today. Of course, we do have Frank Birkenhauer and Jim Rowan from Colerain Township. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
I would also like to let everyone know that as of today, September 30th, we had talked with the Hamilton County Board of Elections and there was no registered opposition. So we will have just the proponents with us this evening. In a moment, I will be opening the phone lines to you, the voting audience at home, but until that time, I will allow Mr. Birkenhauer to give us an opening statement of today's issue. Mr. Birkenhauer?
Yes, thank you. Tonight we're going to discuss a proposed joint economic development zone in Colerain Township. This is commonly referred to as a JEDZ. It's allowed under Ohio law, and it is a income tax which would be levied on the commercial portion of the Colerain corridor between Galbraith and Colerain and Struble and Colerain. The area in question would be the contiguous commercial areas which also go down some of the main thoroughfares such as Compton, the Springdale Road corridor, and Struble Road corridor as well. So those contiguous commercial properties would be included. We did work with the Hamilton County Development Company in doing a study, and we believe that this would garner approximately about $1 million in revenue from the income tax, which would be a benefit to the residents and redo the streets in Colerain Township, and a benefit to the joint economic development zone businesses as well in terms of the infrastructure that's needed. One thing that Colerain Township did is we looked at one of our greatest needs in this township and how to fulfill this. And this was one of the few options available to us that would not raise our residents' taxes, but would allow us to finally be able to find a solution to fix our streets in Colerain Township. We feel like the JEDZ under Ohio law is one of the great tools available to us to really do neighborhood revitalization, which will in turn help the 3.5 million square feet of retail space, that they'll have a stable community and stable neighborhoods and customers for their businesses for a long time in the future.
All right, thank you. With that, I will open up the phone lines to you as well as our email. If you are joining us on September 30th, you can join us. The phone number is 825-3971, or our phone number, or live@waycross.org is the email. You can get all the information here. Of course, there are a few rules of the road first. You must be a resident of Colerain Township in order to participate. In doing so, you must give your name and address to our call handler. You will not be
identified.
Thank you. I am having one of those days. You will not be identified you will only be identified by your name and part of town. And with that, and of course, it must be posed to both opponents, but since we are just one, please be kind in your questions. First question off, you want to start out, Jenny?
Sure. I think that there's some misunderstandings from people about how you plan to use this money. So if you could kind of walk us through how you arrived at how the money's going to be spent and where you would spend it if the voters approved the JEDZ. I think that'd be a good place to start.
Sure. Well, let me start with that comment, because the JEDZ could have been put together a number of different ways. It could have been used for public safety, could have been used for general operation. However, our greatest need, as Mr. Birkenhauer indicated, is public infrastructure. And we wanted to demonstrate our commitment to the community that should this JEDZ be passed, that those dollars would be earmarked for public infrastructure. Our last road levy failed in 2001. We've not had a funding source to fund roads other than just the general fund, at which point we lost $1.5 million through the state budget process in 2011. So right now we are not earmarking any dollars for resurfacing of our roads outside of a little grant we may get through the Community Development Block Grant. Our SKIP grants are no longer being applied for because we don't have the matching funds. So by focusing on the public infrastructure need allows us to address one of our core areas of responsibility. We have responsibility to provide fire and EMS, police, and then also public infrastructure in our roads. So we felt that we've addressed the need with our police levy this past May. Our fire levy was not up until 2015. That has now been stretched out beyond 2018. And we have an overall financial goal to try to make it out to 2022. So we want the community to know that if they pass issue 30, it's going to be used for roads. Now, the legislation is very specific in that a certain portion of that has to be used within the zone or to benefit the zone. And we will continue to work with council as we define what that project list looks like for the next several years. What we do know right now is that we need to get funding into our neighborhoods. Our streets are crumbling, our sidewalks, our curbs, our gutters. And to be able to put that money into our neighborhoods, stabilize property values, and to protect the zone so that we don't have more foreclosures and more people leaving this community that could ultimately cause a downturn in economic development. So that's where the focus is, and my team, along with the board, will be actually presenting kind of the first phase of what one of our strategic initiatives looks like November or on October 21st at our work session on trying to lay out our plans to address neighborhood revitalization through public infrastructure, as well as addressing property maintenance issues and such. So it's going to be a conversation. If we're going to be ready if issue 30 passes to be able to implement this right after the first of the year. Once those funding starts coming in, we want to actually get that investment into the roads as soon as possible.
Thank you. Of course, one of the questions probably that most citizens have on their mind is the map itself. What was the choice and why just the Colerain corridor? We could have gone, we've seen other townships take drastic means in going through the entire township, or as we're seeing, just a pinpointed area. Why this area only? And
Sure, that's a great question, and we've been asked that often. The area south of Galbraith, the Groesbeck area, has really suffered from disinvestment through the years. If you could look at the vacant Western Home Center, it's a 12-acre property that used to employ 400-plus people in the township. They made trusses for residential homes throughout the entire tri-state area. All the jobs moved out of there. We've got a lot of vacancies from a retail perspective. A few years ago, we went to the state of Ohio and had that particular corridor in that area designated as a community reinvestment area. We felt that if, in fact, we were to define the zone to put an additional tax burden on an area that we're trying to pass tax incentives on, was probably not the wisest move at this point, because we're working diligently to revitalize the Groesbeck area and increase investment in that area. That being the case, some of the most successful areas and some of the greatest investment that's occurring is in that area in the Cross County, the Ronald Reagan up to the Struble Road corridor. We've literally had in the Northgate Mall area, by the time the cinema opens, close to $40 million in new investment. Most of these tenants in that particular area are national retailers that are paying an income tax literally 1 and 2 exits up from us. You look at, there's 2 Walmart superstores within the zone currently. Those Walmart superstore, or the Walmart company, is paying income tax literally 1 and 2 exits up from us. So most of these tenants, Macy's in the Tri-County Mall in the Springdale area, they're paying an income tax. Sears, just a plethora of national tenants that are located that are currently doing this and paying for their services that are provided them in the cities in which they reside. And many times through the years, with having a Colerain corridor with 3.5 million square feet of retail space, obviously there's EMS runs, there's accidents, there's chest pains at work, there's slip and falls, there's shoplifting. We spend a lot of our resources on that is currently paid through our levy and property taxes for our residents. The JEDZ is an opportunity through this income tax, which is a 1%, for a lot of these businesses to pay for the services in which they consume. And we thought it was a great option for our residents to get a benefit from this through getting their street fixed and also stabilizing some of the neighborhoods that may need some more investment in terms of their road and infrastructure. When you're trying to attract young families in your community, we want to put our best foot forward in terms of good streets and good infrastructure and a great place to live, work, and play. And some of the ramifications, if this doesn't pass, we're looking at how do we keep our parks open, how do we maintain these parks in our community center, and provide these services without the funding that was cut from the state of Ohio a few years ago. And that's why we're here right now. The state cuts are literally over 50% of our general fund.
Jenny?
Yeah, I guess one of the critical points that you hear about a JEDZ or even a JED really is taxation without representation, that you have people who will be paying the tax who don't get to vote whether it passes or doesn't pass, don't get to vote on how the money is spent. I'm not advocating that position necessarily, but I'd like to hear your answer to that, because it's one of the most frequently mentioned reasons for opposing a JEDS from people that I speak with, and it's taxation without representation. So.
Sure, and we've heard the same thing. You know, a JEDZ is very similar to a municipal income tax. And unless you reside in that municipality, you don't have a vote on a city income tax either. So if you have somebody working in the city of Cincinnati that lives in Colerain Township, they're paying that city of Cincinnati tax, but yet they did not have a vote or a say-so in that tax rate. The same thing applies to the JEDZ. We've kind of looked at this from the perspective that we have a need. Our community has told us we have a need. What options do we have to be able to address it? You have your typical property taxes we could go after, but we're already looking at being the third highest property taxed township as compared to our peer groups within the Hamilton County area. So there's not a lot of interest in increasing more property taxes to address this. We've lost $1.5 million in our general fund. While our parks and our community center aren't considered essential services, we do believe that they provide a quality of life issue to the residents of Colerain Township, and we want to preserve that. We don't want to make any further cuts to our parks or community center. We believe that they are important. We believe our community values those non-essential services. So how can we be innovative? The JEDZ law was in existence at the time that we proposed this. Recent legislation has changed that. That law expires on December 31st. I suspect the reason that has expiring is there's a lot of lobbying from other municipalities, because really what the JEDZ does is, the way we have crafted this is, it'll be a 1% earnings tax for those that work in that Colerain zone. So the majority of the residents in Colerain Township will not pay this tax. However, if there's a resident of Colerain Township or a business that's impacted by the zone, we are providing them an opportunity through our Community Improvement Corporation to, at the end of the year, apply for a grant to get 100% back of what they paid into that zone. So essentially they're held harmless. So we've tried to be innovative and creative to be able to meet the need of the community by fixing our streets through public infrastructure, but also protecting them against an additional tax burden. Now, for those non-residents that work in the zone, like the majority of every other municipality within the state of Ohio that has an income tax, they did not have a say-so in that tax unless they lived in the community. In our case, we also have talked to council, we've talked to some other cities. The reciprocity agreement will be available for those non-residents. So if there is somebody that lives in a city that pays an income tax that works in our zone, they will be able to get a credit through their own municipality. So more than likely, a majority of those workers in the zone will also not be impacted by this because of that credit that will be provided. So essentially what we have happening here is a shifting of tax dollars from one community to another. So these non-residents that are enjoying the services provided by our township will, yes, be paying a tax here, hopefully maybe not be burdened by paying more tax than they were previously, But instead of paying that money into their own community, a portion of that's going to come back to Colerain and be able to provide relief to our residents so that they don't have to face another property tax increase.
Let's continue on that and talking about those residents being able to get that credit back. A lot of people look and go, well, you're making this a little more difficult for me than it should be. This would not be the case, correct?
It's really, I think, it's a very simple form. It's a one-page form that we're looking at, and this has been adopted. This is a form that they would fill out to get your corporate net profits tax back and your payroll tax. So it's one page. It's very simple. It would follow the same as a tax year. By April 15th, you would apply for this refund. And I don't think you could get much simpler than this one page. If I compare that to my taxes, I think we've done a very good job here in simplifying this process for our residents so they can get that money back very easily.
And I think it's important to note that if we had our choice, we would have rather not taxed the residents and businesses to begin with. But the law doesn't allow that to happen. It requires us to make the tax, but then it gives us the ability to provide the grants back through the Community Improvement Corporation, and we see that as a win-win. Is it going to be a little bit of an inconvenience? Absolutely. But if you think about that as opposed to paying additional property tax to address your roads or losing a park or losing your community center, we think it's some value that it's a win-win for both the township and the residents.
And this is also a contract between you and the City of Harrison, correct?
That is correct.
Why the choice with Harrison?
I can answer that. When we were looking at this, Colerain Township has one joint economic development district, which is on one parcel. It's a nursing home that's going into the township, and we're contracting out with the City of Cheviot. So when we were looking at potential partners for this, there's some requirements within the law that you can be one city away or one township away from your community. What I wanted to make sure for the benefit of our residents, that whoever we contracted out with, we're a pretty large township, and Colerain Corridor is a large commercial corridor. I wanted to make sure that whoever we partnered with, they did it right, and they were able to handle the volume of Colerain Avenue and the questions if they come up. And we felt confident. We had a group of cities that we did RFPs upon and asked them to give us their best proposal in terms of cost sharing and what their income tax collection rate is and so forth. And I can tell you that Harrison came in and their share minus their administrative fee was 8.5%. And I believe that that's one of the lowest shares a city has taken within a JEDZ zone in recent history. And I think we did very well there in keeping the money at home in Colerain Township. And that was our goal. Jim stated, ideally we wouldn't have to ask our people to apply for the grant back. Ideally, we could possibly do this and keep 100% of this within the township and for our residents. But the law is the law, and it states that you have to partner with the city to collect the income tax. And that's what we did, but we did it, in my opinion, in the most efficient manner possible with the 8.5% share. And I think we've got the best bang for the buck if you look at some of these similar arrangements.
All right, Jenny, I think
Sure.
I'm going to volley this over for the last question.
Gosh, this is the last one?
This is it.
Wow. Then I'm going to make it a two-parter so I can get everything.
All right.
Explain a little bit about how the JEDZ will affect the businesses in the corridor in terms of the corporate net profits tax. And then kind of finish up with, is there anything that we haven't asked you about regarding the JEDZ that you think is really vital for voters to know?
Well, with regards to the net profits tax, when we were exploring the JEDZ for the November ballot, we obviously had to go through the Economic Development Committee. We also ran it through the Financial Advisory Committee. And there was a real emphasis on protecting the residents and protecting the businesses within Colerain Township. And that's why we adopted the grant language to provide 100% of the net profits tax back to the business as well as to the residents. because that's our number one priority, is
Is
protecting them.
the business owners don't have to be Colerain Township residents?
That's
It's all
correct.
of our business owners.
We chose not to put the qualifier in there that they had to be a Colerain Township resident. So just like Frank had indicated, a resident who pays into the zone can apply for the grant. The net profits tax is the same way. That will be collected, the grant's applied for, and it will be refunded in the form of a check right back to the business. And I think the second part of your question, this is definitely an education campaign. When you read off issue 30, it's not like your typical levy. It states, do you vote for or against the contract and resolution? And that's very important because it's the for the contract and resolution that is going to allow us to implement the JEDZ. For the last 2.5, maybe 3 years, we've been focused on financial sustainability. We've made some very difficult decisions in this community from a cuts perspective. Our employees have taken sacrifices and pay freezes. We have a financial plan through 2022 that's underway that's going to keep us off the ballot and keep us out of the pockets of the taxpayers. This JEDZ is the most innovative approach that we can proceed with that's going to allow us to generate funding to be able to address our public infrastructure without having a huge tax burden or really any tax burden on our residents. If this JEDZ issue 30 goes down in November, we're going to be forced to dig deeper through cuts in our parks, our community center, and other areas in an effort to be able to address our crumbling streets. We know that has to change. We don't really have an alternative outside of issue 30, and we're hopeful that our community sees that and encourage them to contact us if they have questions and get their questions answered.
I think rarely, from the standpoint of a voter, do you have the opportunity to vote to gain services and basically keep your tax burden low for a period of time. This is one of those rare opportunities. By voting for issue 30 and voting to approve this contract, do you have that ability to do so? If you look at the average resident, the fact that they can vote for this contract and possibly get their streets fixed, I think is a win-win for all of us. And these retailers that are basically utilizing our community members as their customers, they're going to benefit from strong, stable neighborhoods in Colerain Township and a great future in Colerain Township.
Well, we have reached the bottom of the hour. I want to appreciate all of that. I do want to give at least a closing statement, unless you want to use what you have just said as your closing statement, but I'll at least give you at least 30 seconds
Sure.
to close us out.
Well, I think the question that, if people question why the JEDZ, I think the better question is why not the JEDZ? If not a JEDZ, then what is the alternative? And we've talked about that. Closing parks, closing the community center, additional property taxes, those aren't really options that we see that are going to provide us the opportunity to deliver excellence to a best-in-class community. This gives our community an opportunity to address a need and be able to move forward to reach our financial sustainability plan till 2022. Thank you.
All right. Well, Mr. Birkenhauer, Mr. Rowan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Jenny, of course, thank you for joining us as well. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us as well. If you need more information about the candidates and issues that are affecting you, you can always direct yourself to the Hamilton County Board of Elections and their website, votehamiltoncounty.org. Get all your information there, as well as knowing that the polls will be open coming soon, of course, November 4th, starting at 6:30 a.m. So, now that you have all of the information that we have presented here to you, please remember to do your duty and vote responsibly on November 4th. Thank you. Waycross takes no position on candidates or issues. We provide these forums so that our viewers may be better informed voters for the November 4th election.